Hello, my name is Cheri Brunner Daschle, and I'm here today representing the Tread of Pioneers Museum. We are collecting oral interviews for a project called Tales of the Old Junior High. There will be interviews of staff, teachers, and administrators who worked at Steamboat Springs Junior High School on 7th Street in the 1970s, before Steamboat Springs Middle School was built on the Strawberry Park campus on Amethyst Street. Please tell me your name and what your connection is with the old junior high.
Mary L. Brassell, and I was the librarian there from 1974 until we moved, and then for many years more at the new school.
Do you know when did you retire, Mary?
2003.
Where did you grow up?
Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Where did you go to college, and what is your degree?
I went to Hillsdale College in Michigan and received a Bachelor of Arts in English. And then I went to the University of Hawaii in Honolulu, Hawaii, and received a Master's in Library Science. And then I have 90 more hours plus that in education.
Gosh. Where did you live before Steamboat, and what made you decide to move to Steamboat?
I had lived in Vermont, New York, Seattle, Minnesota, Vermont again, and then library school. Was going back to work in a library in Hawaii and stopped in Steamboat to visit college friends, Rick and Lynn Bear, who owned the Positive and Negative. And then we never left. We just stayed. It was in April of '73, I think.
So Rick and Lynn's place was called the Positive Negative or the Positive Negative?
Positive Negative.
Positive
Actually,
Negative.
I'm not sure it was open. Well, I think it was open yet. And they lived in Steamboat too when it was still dirt roads and everything out there.
And was that their photography camera shop? Where was that located?
It was on where the old bank was, right on the corner of, it would be 8th and Lincoln, I think.
Gosh, I barely remember that.
So then I interviewed at Buckingham Academy to be their librarian, but it was a fledgling private school.
Where was Buckingham located?
It was up on where the Timbers is,
That's right.
Rabbit Ears Pass. And my husband at the time was Bill Baldwin, and he had gone to hotel management school in Hawaii. So he got a job at the Ptarmigan Inn, and we got an apartment at the Ptarmigan House to live in, which was just being built. And after I got a part-time job at the public library and was the reservationist at the Ptarmigan Inn.
And this is all before you got the job at the school.
Yeah.
Who did you interview with to get your job at the school?
Well, I interviewed in 1973 with Bud Root, and I didn't get the job. And it was kind of interesting to me because there was a library clerk working there, and I thought they could really use some help when I went to visit and everything. But I didn't get the job. Mr. Root was great. And the next year, I knew the state librarian really well because I was involved with the Three Rivers Library System, which encompassed many counties. Her name was Anne Marie Falsone, and she said, Mary, the junior high wants to apply for a grant. And it was ESEA Title II funding. But they can't apply for it unless they have someone with a library degree. So I think you should go and apply for that job. And my training was public and university. It was not school. But I knew that I could do it anyway. And so I went to interview with Mr. Root again. Same office. Maybe a different outfit. I thought maybe what I wore the first time he didn't like. I didn't know. And I got the job. And he said, yes, we need you to write this huge grant. I said, okay.
Now that you're here.
And then I asked him, well, I just wondered, why didn't you hire me last year? I'm just curious. I'd like to know. And he was very nice, and he said, because we didn't want to pay for your master's degree on the salary schedule. I said, okay, that I understand. You know, that was fair. I thought it was something I wore. You know, I didn't know. I think I asked him that. He said, no, the board just didn't want to pay the money. And then when they wanted the grant, which I wrote with Van Fletcher and Lee Smith, we got the grant. And at the time it was like $12,000, which doesn't seem like much, But at that time, it was quite a bit.
And what was the grant for again?
Library materials.
Library materials.
So then I went ahead and ordered all kinds of wonderful things.
So when you first started, what kind of shape was that library in?
Well, the funny thing is there was a bell, this might be it, and it was on the desk. And so the first thing I thought was, no one will ever ring a bell for me. I'll always be here, and I'll always be looking up, and I'll always be out and about. So this is the bell, I think, and then my kids started giving me some more as a reminder. And so that was the first thing I noticed, and that the person was crocheting behind the desk. And I said to myself, I'll never be crocheting. I'll be here for the kids and the teachers. So that was kind of an epiphany for me. The paperbacks were all from Moody Bible Press. And I knew about the publisher from my education. And the collection was not developed by someone that knew how to select materials for that age group, is what I would like to say. Broad spectrum of things.
And you didn't have an aide to start with, it was just
you.
Yeah, I got
you
to
came
come up
in.
and help
It was
down
like
then.
for an hour and a half a day. Right? So then I handled all that's funny too, I was talking, 16 millimeter films, remember we had to order them all and process them all. They were huge, they were heavy. And then I had to mail them all back myself, and they were delivered to me. And I remember I was doing so much of that and shelving books, and I went to Mr. Root and said, you know, if I could have a library aide, even part-time, I could really have a great program for this school. I had a lot of ideas, but I spent so much time doing all this other stuff. And he said, well, I really don't have the money. And I said, I'll write a grant. And I did. It was Michelle Epstein. She was my first library aide. I remember her name. She was real artistic, like you. So I got the grant, and he said, she worked for me for a year, and he said, I see what you mean. You can do a lot of things. And that's when I had the author's reception and all those great things. We had so much fun.
Tell me about some of those authors.
Oh gosh, I should have looked that up.
But I
Well,
know
it was
that-
Daisy Leonard.
Yes.
Daisy Anderson, I mean. No, Leonard was her name. And Bob Swinehart came. And Sancy and Tom Suddeth. She's now Sancy Berry, who had written a book on cross-country skiing. And so I brought in any local authors I could find. Well, everybody loved it. And we brought in kids from the whole school. It was over, I think, 2 days or more.
Every fall?
No, I just did that once.
I only did that once.
It was a big planning thing. I brought in other authors quite frequently, but I never had that big group.
What do
And
you
we-
remember about Daisy Anderson?
Oh, she was great. I remember she had a black dress and with a white collar. And she was kind of a regal person. I remember her sitting at the table and she had a presence, and the children were very respectful, and the students, I should say. So quiet and really in awe of her. But she spoke from her heart, and, it's just a little book that she has from slavery to affluence. And I think that she didn't do many more things like that after that. And Bob Swinehart had written poetry. So then I posted it everywhere. And he was great. He came all dressed in Western wear. And
If I recall, he could recite his poetry just right off the top
Yes.
of his head, too.
I wish I could remember the others. I'm sure it's in my scrapbook and stuff. But those are the three I remember the most. And anyway, so then after I got the library assistant with the grant, then the school district funded it for the rest of my career. And then that ended after I retired after.
Oh, you mean the aide position?
Yeah. And then I also had 8 student assistants, always.
And that was usually 8th grade kids, right?
I still remember them all. They were great. And I also had like 7 parent volunteers, always. So it was a lot of training, but it was great because then I could do other things that, more being with kids more than doing other stuff.
Do you remember some of, or do you keep in touch with any of those kids anymore, or no?
Well, since I worked at the public library for 12 years after I retired, Brunner Library, Well, then, yeah, I would see a lot of them, and they'd always come in and say, "How are you, Mrs. Brassell?" And I'd say, "You can call me Mary. I've been retired for quite a while." And they would just look at me like, and sometimes when they left the library, they would say, "It's good to see you, Mary." Some kids wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Never.
It just feels
No,
like-
there are lots of kids. Ron Norton, Jay Poulter.
Mhm.
Jay was in my first 8th grade class. He's like 65 now. Still see him around.
Yeah.
Oh, lots of kids. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember what a big deal it was when you first, I think, did your fall purchase of the brand new books for the year.
Oh,
And
so
nobody
fun.
could check them out. They were all on display,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a big thing. Kids loved it.
And they were all, and then I would have the teachers for coffee and donuts first.
That's right.
Always.
Do you
Or
remember-
homemade stuff.
Do you remember somebody stealing a book from you?
In the library?
Mhm.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
But then they would put it back in the book drop usually. Often they didn't keep it. Oh, yes. I'm sure that happened.
It happened. Right to read. Tell me about Right to Read.
Yeah, Judy Miller actually started that program. Judy and Jack were working there when I first started. She was like their reading teacher. But then I remember going with Marie Bose, a parent, to the Right to Read state conference, and we would go. It was a really big deal for the state and our school. And I think that continued into the new building as well.
So what would happen during Right to Read time?
Everybody would stop. It was supposed to be everybody, even office. I don't know if the principals did or not, probably not.
Actually, they did.
Oh, good for them. And that's good. And so everybody would stop wherever they were in their class. I think it was 20 minutes. And we'd all read. And I think it was very good at promoting the love of reading. We did that for years and years. I don't know when it stopped. You would probably know better than me.
I don't remember it stopping. I remember it being a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was lucky because I was assigned to you at that time. And the first time I ever read Little Women, I sat in one of those sunny windows up in your beautiful
Oh, it
library
was so
and
pretty up there.
read Little Women for the first time, and I had to read when I came, and it was a
Darn.
heartbreak.
Yeah, we got along so well. And you did all those great bulletin displays for
I
me.
did love doing bulletin boards.
Yeah.
And what about the most horrible week in reading?
Oh, that was so fun. I even did that. I worked at the high school after I retired at their library for a semester, and I even did that there with those kids. They were just like junior high students, I found. It was funny. I thought they'd be so sophisticated, but not really. The most horrible week in reading was around Halloween, and we would do a display and all kinds of creepy things. And I just remember Tom Palmer was one of my library aides. He was in 8th grade. And we made a coffin out of old bookshelves. Do you remember that area in the back that had it was almost like a soda fountain stand, but it had been the superintendent's office, I think, and I don't know why, but it had a counter, like in a kitchen, all around it, but
That's right.
it was very strange. Anyway, it was in the back room, and we put the coffin on that countertop, and the kids made a mummy. I had great library, it's real creative. So they would just buy into the most horrible week in reading. And we put up a display, and Stuart Handloff came in dressed as Edgar Allan Poe, and we had the official podium, the old wooden, beautiful one, and he would get behind it and crouch down, and then he would come up. Actually, it just gives me the chills to think about it because he was so effective, and the kids were just like, he was very good at that kind of reading, so expressive. But then I came to school one morning. We had those doors. They were kind of flimsy, actually. And Tom Palmer had gotten in there, and he laid in the coffin. I'll never forget it. And the lights were all off, and you had to turn the lights on in each room individually. So the library was 2 big, huge rooms. Used to be the administration office, I think. I'm not sure. And he sat up in the coffin. It just totally shocked me. And I said, Tom, I don't believe you did that. And it freaked me out. I was there alone, and nobody else was with me at that time. I was like, okay, I guess he took that into his heart, that he wanted to do that.
Do you have any idea what happened to him, or did you ever keep in touch with him?
Unfortunately, he had some really hard times. Jay Poulter told me.
Oh.
I think he might have dropped out of high school, actually.
Oh, that's too bad.
And maybe I shouldn't mention people's names. I'm wondering about that.
No, I think it's fun to know because it kind of pieces together your history with like the Poulter family and, several. But I do remember that you read Ray Bradbury's The October Game?
The October Game. I read that at the high school again.
One of the
I read
stories.
it for...
I'll never forget that story.
Probably, I think probably 25 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and then Cheri Shivey called me after I retired. Do you have a copy of that story you used to read? And I had kept a copy. It's kind of an obscure short story, but the kids, remember, they would just, I read to the whole school by the end of the week, and I would dress in costume. And I had that creepy lamp with a fringe on it. It's still in my garage, I think. And we turned off all the lights, and I had this horrible lamp. I found the lampshade in a dumpster at Walton Village Apartments when I was living there. And it had red fringe around it, and then the lamp was just terrible. And yeah, we turned out all the lights, closed all the blinds. That was a great story, The October Game, and it ends with the shock.
Yeah.
And when I worked at the high school, I was reading it to Jennifer Gabriel's class, and they were seniors. And the principal came in to the room while I was reading, and he took out a senior boy. He was very quiet and very nice about how he did it. And I just kept reading, and I'd also turned out the lights in that classroom. And later in the day, the senior boy came back to me and said, "I'd like to know how that story ended." And I was like, that's what I meant. They were just...
They loved it?
Yeah, they loved it. And nobody had been doing that with them, I don't think, much.
Well, yeah.
It was fun. I just did what I did at the middle school.
Yeah.
For a semester.
You hardly hear of anybody reading aloud. I guess sometimes at the public library now.
I don't know if they do in the schools. They might. I'm not sure. Yeah.
What do you remember about coworkers and staff that you worked with when you first started?
Oh my, when I first started. Well, Judy Miller was a pistol, and I worked with her quite a bit. I remember Mike Portelance taking the candy out of the candy drawer, and funny things like that. We had that candy drawer. It was so funny. Our lounge was so little, and the principal, I think, was colorblind, and he upholstered all the couches in a red naugahyde, which is like the worst color for promoting camaraderie, I think. And I remember we walked in there and we went, oh no. And then the Coke machine was red too.
Yes.
So you walked in and you were like on fire.
It was a tiny, skinny little room.
It was so little. Those two couches, the Coke machine at the end. It was just a teeny room.
Yeah.
Okay, so then there's Winston Walker was above me in the science lab. And Jupiter Jones, he was in that other little room that was at the end of the hall upstairs.
He was a special ed teacher or something.
Right.
Yeah.
I just ran into his former wife 2 weeks ago. That was interesting. But like the steps were all kind of worn out.
Didn't it sound different? You walked through that building.
Yeah, I had that in my notes. It was just kind of a cavernous building. The hallways were all concrete, painted.
Yeah.
Bathrooms, not so nice. And the library was up 2 flights of steps. And how did we get all the equipment? Because I was in charge of all that equipment, and I just can't remember.
Yeah, we rolled it down a hallway, but then it all had to be carried
Maybe
up.
there was one 60mm projector on each floor. But I had to know all the technology and teach everyone how to run their 16mm films. Filmster projectors! We had Filmster projectors. Yeah, I wrote notes about the antique stuff we had.
Oh, do tell.
Well, I had the first computers, Apple IIes, in the library. There were just 4 of them. They were the first ones in the school. And we had a Ditto machine, overhead projectors. See, none of that's used anymore. It's all high tech. So to me, and we only had 325 students when I started. So I knew everyone within a couple of weeks. We opened the windows with a long stick. We should have kept those damn things.
Oh, yeah.
And they had a hook at the end. The only way you could open the windows in the library, because it was so, remember how high those ceilings were?
Yeah.
So you'd have to raise them like that. And my library aides were always cold and I was always hot. So I would open the windows and they would close the windows. And I would open the windows and they would, do you remember that? Becky Hicks, she was just always freezing and I was like, oh, we gotta open the windows. But I was from Minnesota, so I was like always boiling. And that was pretty funny. I had such great library aides, Joyce Catton, Nancy Burnham, just Noelle Tripp. And I had a library aide then for the rest of my career, full time. And it was wonderful because I could do so many other things. Let's see, other colleagues. Cece Scheichels, I loved. Well, that was really in the new school, but we were really close. And our Chris Decker, and then Bonnie Byer came, and then Ann Keating came, and Bob Harris, of course. How could we forget him?
Any particular memories of Bob or working with Bob?
When you would get on the intercom, and some student was in trouble, and it'd be like all of a sudden, and don't you dare send him his homework. He's not going to do it anyway. No, he would just talk, and we all the teachers would be like, okay, Bob's got somebody in his office now, and it would just come blaring over thing, and we'd all be like, okay, we'll follow the orders.
What about Bud? How was Bud to work for?
You know, I liked him a lot. I thought he was very fair and always courteous, gracious, supportive. Told you, that you were doing a good job when you were doing a good job, and carefully wrote evaluations, which I kind of wish I could look at again. I probably go pick them up. Probably burned by now, though.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have.
And I had one of my most difficult things was censorship cases. I think there was one thing you talked about. That was hard for me. And
can you tell us more about that? In general, it doesn't have to.
Well, because of the age group that I was purchasing for, it was a little tricky because they were 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. So it wasn't like I would do a display on books about incest or someone that is having a lot of trouble raising with their family, some kind of.
Yeah.
But we had books like that. But I always read 2 reviews of every book. So a big job, part of my job was reading book reviews. I did a lot of that at home too, and I would make a card on every book and where it was reviewed. And I only ordered things that were reviewed as being recommended for our age group. And so there were books that were on the edge of being, I don't know what to say.
Like overtly.
Yeah, I don't want to say inappropriate, that's not the right word, but they would meet the needs of some of the kids in our school. And George Barnett, our counselor, he came to me and he said, thank you for having these books in your collection. Good. Because there are kids here who need these books. And I said, you're welcome, I'll keep doing that then. And then because of that, there were censorship cases too, but I never had any book withdrawn. There was a formal committee set up, which I developed a policy with the other librarians from the American Library Association for intellectual freedom, because it's really going on much worse now in the United States. I've been a guest speaker at 2 book clubs on censorship in school libraries, so I'm pretty up to date what's going on.
So if a book were, let's say, complained about by a parent, what would be the process then?
Then there's an intellectual freedom committee, and it's called Reconsideration of Instructional Materials. That's the policy. And the librarian involved in selecting the book is not on the committee. It's a committee of parents and teachers.
Local?
Local, from more than one school, and at least 1 administrator, maybe 2. So every person on the committee has to read the book in its entirety, not just the parts that are being looked at. And then they meet and decide if it needs to be withdrawn from the collection or not.
And you didn't ever have one?
I never had any withdrawn. I had some tough moments with J. Allen Ofterheid. Is it okay to mention names, or I don't know?
I think so.
He asked me to take the book out without going to the
He
committee.
was the superintendent at the time. That makes it.
I said, no, we can't do that. And I had another thing happen with a magazine that had a cover, was actually a Rubens cover of a full, partially nude woman on the cover. And it was recommended that I not put it out for the kids to see. So the person that told me that, I said, well, you would have to fill out the form then for reconsideration of instructional materials. And then I walked back to the library and I said, well, I'll probably lose my job now, because it was an administrator that wanted me just to take it out. And I said, I really can't do that.
That's hard.
So I went back and just thought, well, I had to. I think you asked about uncomfortable situations. That was one for me. And the person came to me. He looked up the policy and he said, you're right. He said, you're right.
Good.
So we never did withdraw any instructional materials.
Wow.
Nothing. In this day and age, it'd be much more rampant. Very difficult. Librarians are resigning from their jobs because they're under such pressure. Community members are harassing them.
Gosh.
It's much worse now than when I was working. And I think that's terrible, because that's why you want to hire someone that has training, because they're supposed to know what they're doing.
Well, yeah, I know all the policies, and
you have to follow everything. And then our school district was really good at following that policy. So I had probably 4 cases in my career. It's not very many, but it was enough to be something to worry about. You know, no, I wasn't really worried. I just
concerned. Yeah,
I was concerned. Yeah.
Were there people who worked at the school, at the old school, that you considered mentors who had a major impact on you? Or
I think someone like Wayne Kilpatrick had he supported me a lot when I first started, and would come and say, that was great, Mary, keep doing this stuff,
Okay.
And Judy Miller, I felt, Judy Yamaguchi was one of our counselors too, I remember. And the teaching staff was great. Kathy Chamberlain, I worked with her. Kathy Hagen was her name then. I worked with her really closely. She was our reading teacher. And then all the English teachers. I felt very supported, because they would, if I tell them I wanted to do something within their, I like to do co-teaching with them. They didn't drop their kids off like a special at the elementary school. That never happened in our building. They would come with their students and we would teach together. And I really liked that relationship. Sometimes I would go, Cheri Shivey and I worked real closely together too. I would go to the classroom and maybe introduce the project. And then they would come to the media center, and we were scheduled heavily.
I bet.
We had a whole calendar set up. It was huge.
Yeah.
And people would come in, sign up for the year practically. I thought it was a great job. I loved it. It was very busy.
And it seemed like a lot of the staff, I was young, I was 20, but it seemed like a lot of the staff were pretty close to just being out of college. It was their first full-time teaching job. And because I was younger, I didn't know so much of this, but I heard there were a lot of parties on the weekends.
Oh.
People would get together.
Yes, nobody had any children then.
Yeah.
Which makes it easier to party, doesn't it?
A lot, and people started families not long after that. But
right.
There were a lot of couples and singles, and the camaraderie was just.
There's a lot of good FAC, Friday Afternoon Club.
That's right.
And scavenger hunts at Halloween that would take you to bars and cemeteries and everywhere you could ever imagine in between.
And who would instigate that?
Winston, for some reason, it seems like Winston did some of that. And Bob Harris, Bert Svensson. Bert was is another great colleague. And Jean Laborie, lots of fun there. Nancy Dolan was on our staff. I think we had a great staff.
Yeah, it seems different. There was a smaller population of students, smaller population of staff, younger staff, and a lot of you started teaching at the same time, and so it seemed like there was a different. Yeah,
we were kind of fresh. We were like trying out. Like for me, it was my second job as being a librarian and first time as a school, and you just decide, people had more time to dream things up and work on things.
Yeah.
Than when they had their
so
families.
Much pressure to meet a certain standard or?
Well, how about, I remember, I wish I could find the list. I wrote down every single thing I ever went through, like continuous progress curriculum. Every single thing that we had. Friday Friends, mini courses. I taught video production for mini courses. And then Friday Friends, that was a little tough at times, I thought.
Was that a year-long thing?
Yes.
They had like a small group of kids assigned to you for Friday Friends, and then what kind of activities did you guys do?
It was almost like what they did at the high school with anchor time. But that was even more pronounced, I think, because it was longer periods of time with those kids. But because at the high school, you had them for all 4 years.
Well,
The anchor. It wasn't very long, Friday Friends. We would do activities and just try to get to know the kids. I remember I had someone that ended up going to jail. That was another thing. Like, there was a few kids that we thought would go to prison, and they did. And we almost knew it. I'm not going to say their names, but you know who they are. And we would all talk and go, you know what? I'm really afraid he's going to end up in prison. And it happened, and that I just felt terrible about that. I was like, almost like, I don't know, it was just sad.
Yeah.
But you almost knew that they had no conscience.
Yeah.
It was scary. Just a couple, but it was enough in my career to feel that sadness, I think.
And mini courses. I don't know, mini courses. Mini courses, is that a springtime thing? Did we do that in the spring?
Yeah, but it was like once a week.
Oh, it was?
I taught video production.
Okay. And the kids could pick from what they wanted to go to, and weren't there several? Like, you would go to leathercraft, or you would do, it just depended on what that teacher wanted to teach.
Yeah, I would have the same group doing video production.
Okay.
For that series of mini courses, and everybody else would be doing something else.
Okay.
I think it was kind of fun.
I think that was kind of original. They did some of the things like that at the middle school once you guys moved to the middle school, but a lot of that.
Yeah, that was another huge thing we did.
Yeah. Tell me about the move. What do you remember about the move?
Well, oh, you mean the actual physical move? Oh, I was moving to move. Oh, okay. So, what I remember is getting a lot of cardboard boxes and numbering them all, and getting a whole school bus, and the kids would take the books off the shelves at the library in the Dewey Decimal Order, and take the bus to the new school and get off the bus in that same order and come to me, but I had parents helping me, both ends, to get the books on the shelf, because of course the Dewey Decimal System we weren't computerized yet. We didn't have an online catalog, of course. And I remember that, and the other part I remember is designing the school. Perry Raguskis was our consultant. And we all thought, he's not listening to us. We're like, the media center was going to be much smaller than what I ended up with. And it's 7,500 square feet. And it was going to be much smaller. And I went to the school board and met with them and said, it's too small. And then they allowed me to enlarge it, which was pretty great. But I had to fight for that. I had to do a lot of research. And what was going to be happening there. I'm getting a cramp in my legs, so I can move. That's that old age.
What do you remember about during that time or around that time, Steamboat in the 70s?
Wow.
What was your salary? Where did you live?
Oh, $8,500.
With your
that was a master's degree, yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought it was great, but I was working at the Ptarmigan, and I think I got $1.25 an hour there, but I did get housing. And a Raleigh 5-speed bike, I remember he gave me. Because I worked there before I worked at the library. Yeah.
So the first place you lived as a teacher, do you remember how much you paid in rent?
Let's see, were we at the Ptarmigan then? We moved to 3rd Street in the pink house. I think it was like $200 a month or something.
Yeah.
We lived in a little, and then it's funny because other teachers would follow us. Kathy and Tom Chamberlain lived in that house. And then when I married Bob, we lived at Herbage. No, we lived at Whistler Village, and when we moved to Herbage, Ann and Cheri Kerrigan moved into that apartment, and when we left Herbage, they moved into that apartment. And that's kind of how this town was. It was like, oh, Mary and Bob, they're moving. We'll just take their apartment. Because then we bought a house at Park Avenue, 31 Park, for $70,000.
And now you and Bob have 3 sons.
Yes.
And they are how old?
40, 36, and 34.
And any of them live close by?
My youngest son, Nelson, just moved here, and he's looking for a place to live. I should put that.
No, we mentioned it.
He rented a place for 3 months with his significant other. And after, he's paying $2,800 a month for a 1-bedroom. And in 3 months, it goes up to $8,000 a month. So he has to find a place. And he's not going to stay here because they both work from home, and they have stayed with us.
Sure,
but
sure.
Isn't
that crazy?
I'm 78 now. I think I'm kind of over that.
The kids are old.
I'm like, it's fun when they come, like now and everything. But
and you volunteer? No, you didn't volunteer. You worked at the public library for 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
What do you enjoy doing for fun?
Reading, of course. I still read. I read during the day even. I've decided, why not? I can, right? And I always cross-country skied. I just had an injury a couple winters ago, so didn't keep on with that. Was still cross-country skiing. I swim at least 2 days a week with my swimming class. I go to yoga twice a week, and I go camping with my husband when he is able to do that. And just household projects. I still love to cook, bake sourdough bread.
Oh, good for you.
And thought I would have written a book by now, but I haven't.
Have you started one?
I've written some short stories. Oh. And that's about it for writing. I thought I would be a writer. I used to write a lot of poetry, and it was published when I was in college and everything. I don't know.
There's still time.
There's still time, yeah.
Are there things you miss about, let's say, old Steamboat, or, I mean, you taught more years at the Steamboat Springs Middle School, but are there things you miss about the 70s in general, or old Steamboat?
A lot less traffic. I think that would be the main thing. Knowing everyone at the grocery store, I really don't know that many people. Maybe sometimes. Just accessibility to everything, the ease to get around, the feel of a smaller community, and more people of the same income. I feel now we have a huge disparity in income levels, and I think that creates a different feeling in our town. I really do. You know, we were just all kind of middle class and kind of struggling and living pretty simply. Mm-hmm. Now there's so many affluent people that I think it has changed.
I think so too.
But we can still find our own niche, I think.
Yeah. What did you have? Did you have anything in your notes that I missed, or?
I don't know. I'll have to put my other glasses on now. I can do them. Oh, here you go. I talked about the old Coke machine. Oh, I think one of my hardest things was when a student was swatted. Has anyone talked about that?
Not yet.
Okay, well, Duncan Craig. I can't mention his name. I saw his sister. Duncan Craighead was just in love with me and with the library. He was an 8th grade student, and he would come in every morning right when it opened, 8 o'clock. And I had some kids. Lots of guys did that, and they would just come in and, oh, good, you're here, and they would hang out. They loved it there. Jay Poulter said it was his favorite place in the whole building, and he still tells me stuff like that. So I was at a staff meeting, and I didn't open the library that day because we had staff meetings, in the mornings. And he kicked the door in of the library.
No.
Well, I had to report it, I felt, but I didn't know we swatted. I did not know that. So for me, I had to go into Mr. Root's office, and they had a wooden paddle, and Bob swatted Duncan Craighead. And I tell you what, it just really bothered me. And then I decided, I think if anything else happens to me, I'm going to handle it myself, unless it's something grave, you know. I remember at the new school, it was such a beautiful library, all that wood, and it was just, I thought it was gorgeous. And some kid, I saw him chew on the floor. Oh, it was after he was sitting in one of those study carrels, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I was pretty calm, but I think I had a lot of respect. And I went over and I took him on the shoulder, just gently. Come with me, and we're going back. There's a telephone back here. We had those phones. And I want you to call your father or your mother and just tell them what you did. And I never told anyone else about it because I just thought,
Well,
that was enough.
Yeah, you got a lot of support from parents normally.
Yeah, I just felt like, and I don't think we were swatting at that time, but I just decided from then on I would, unless it were something that were like a legal infraction of some sort, when I knew they were still swatting. I don't know when that ended, do you?
I think before we left the old building.
I think so too.
Standard corporal punishment in schools where we all grew up.
But I didn't really know. It didn't happen in my schools.
Yeah,
ever.
Didn't it? And then eventually it stopped, and there were other things.
Yeah, exactly. Going in the little room next to Bob's office.
Yeah, like being put in a room to do your homework.
Isolation and stuff.
But always under supervision.
Yes, but I know another thing. I loved puppets and puppet shows. I always did tons of stuff with puppets. So when we were at the old school, that was just a big deal. Everyone loved doing the puppetry unit. And everybody made puppets. We did puppet shows, and the parents came. We had puppets on parade, and it was so much fun. And the kids grew up, and they got too old for that. And at the new school, I think I did it for maybe 3 years, and I just realized they never really said, and maybe I should have kept on, I don't know, but the children became more sophisticated. Mm-hmm. And that was something that I ended, that I loved doing. It was real creative for the kids. They had to write their script, and it was so fun. So I think the children became more sophisticated then.
Do you remember a difference in this kids very much? Well, it's a time period more than the move, of course. Well, it was kind of logistics in that big building, though, too, because the 6th graders were separate from the 8th graders.
Oh, yes.
Separate from the 7th graders, which was different from the old building. Do you remember the kids being very much different? Well, you already said they're more sophisticated. Or the dynamics between the staff being much more different at the new school?
I think it was good that we had the room that used to be the typing room, I think. The staff lounge where we could meet, and then it moved up next to me where the computer lab used to be, or the computer lab ended up there later. See, that was another thing we had to embrace. So we gave up the teacher's lounge, which was next to the media center, and turned it into a computer lab. And then I had a classroom in the back that was reserved for people teaching and then coming into the library, and that became the other computer lab. So
that's a big change.
Yeah, and I remember Bert Svensson saying, "Do you really want to do this, Mary? It's going to be a lot of extra supervision." And I said, "Well, where are they going to put the computers?" So we had 2 classrooms. Mostly the teachers came with their students. So that was a big change, I felt.
Yeah.
And that students maybe were more isolated in what they were doing than so much in groups, because just by default, when you're on a station or on your iPad or whatever you're doing, or your cell phone, which is not allowed at all now, I know, it isolates you, I think, from the teachers, from the students, and maybe from your fellow staff members. Because when I worked at the high school, everything was done electronically.
So not as much
messaging.
Not as much face-to-face even with
No, we kept on having staff meetings, but I think the kids were much more sophisticated as time went on. I would say from their clothing choices. That was a little bit of a shock for me. Certain pieces of clothing, I thought that was when I should retire, actually. I was like, your mother let you come. And I didn't have any daughters, but I had my ideas about how someone should dress going to school. Actually, I thought the teachers began dressing rather risque. I really did. I felt it was inappropriate.
Yeah.
No names to mention. But when I retired, I said, "Yep. I think I was always a conservative dresser, and that's just how I was." And I think for me, I became president of the Colorado Educational Media Association, and for those several years, I had to learn to speak in front of like 500 members. So it was a real stretch for me. But my school, J. Allen Ofterheid and Mr. Root all supported me to run for that office. And the organization paid me to fly on Rocky Mountain Airways to meetings and home. And it was quite a huge responsibility. And I don't know how I ever got elected, but I did.
How many years?
I was president-elect, and I was a system representative, so I was doing that for like 4 years. Learning to speak, and for me, I thought it was great that my district supported me in doing that.
Yeah.
At the time, it was kind of an unusual thing to do.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot, and then I did a lot of workshops on what I was doing in my building, so I could share it with other librarians. And then I became a consultant for the Colorado State Library. So I did that for 2 summers and drove around the state and tried to help people be better librarians, I guess. And I was going to go work for the state library then. I had just been divorced. So I thought they had offered me a job, a permanent job, and I thought, well, I'm not probably going to have any kids, and I'm not going to get married again. So I probably should take this job. And then I met Bob Brassell in the kitchen at a Christmas party. And that was the end of that plan. So then I got married and had children, last child when I was 44. It was great. But my life took a big change because I was becoming very professionally involved in the state. But I was given, the school district really supported me with that. Yeah. I had to have it okayed by the superintendent and everyone. I think I got off track there, but you're asking about...
No, that's okay. I wanted to know anything else you had in your notes that...
I talked about censorship, swatting. Oh, the boys in prison, I had written that down. Library aid puppets. Opening the window. The creaky floors in the old building.
Yeah.
And no phones. When we think about our communication.
Yeah, there were no phones in the classrooms.
Did anyone talk about the acid on the toilet seat?
No, and that was a story we definitely wanted to... Okay, the 3
I don't
custodians.
Know. Yeah.
Start with that one.
It would be Jim Smith and... Well, anyway, maybe not matter who it was, but... The custodians had a room downstairs, and the old... No, this is at the new junior high. No, this is old. And there was a women's restroom on the floor across from Wayne Kilpatrick's. So it was a long way for me, but for some reason maybe I was down there. And the custodians at that time had really old, big sofas and chairs, and they were allowed to smoke. That's the other thing I remember. That was another big change, because people had to leave their classrooms and smoke outside on the corner, and then eventually they couldn't do that either at the new school. Well, anyway, one day I went down to the women's restroom, and I sat down. It was one stall and a sink. And everything burned when I sat down. And I found out that the janitors had used a really strong cleaning fluid, and they didn't ever rub it off. And I went right to Bud Ritt's office. I was so angry, and I wasn't one of those women that sits back. And I went in, and I think I went to their room and confronted them, and they told me. But they didn't really say they were sorry or anything. I remember I was so angry, and I went right up to Bud, and he sat behind that desk. Remember that desk? And he had his short sleeve shirt on, and he always wore a tie, always. And I started talking to him, and I saw his arms go like this. And pretty soon he was going like this, and he was laughing. And he just couldn't stop. And I got even more angry, but he said, "I'm sorry, I can't." Turned out Colleen Davis, our business teacher, who was married to a minister, had also sat down on it, but she didn't tell anybody. And then she came to me. It all went around the school, of course, what happened to Mary. And she came to me and she said, "Thank you for reporting it." Well, I said, "Yes, this is dangerous. Blisters and stuff." I'm like, "Really?" And I just remember Bud, though. He was
trying not to laugh.
He could not do it. So that was something that happened that, yeah, it was, everybody knew about it. And then the tire on the roof. Did anyone ever talk about that one?
Not until you.
Oh, interesting, because people still talk. So when the Apple IIe computers were up in the old library, the old school, they were with me. There were only 4, I think, to start with. And that's where all the kids learned the first, I said I would do it. And so we started having a leak in the ceiling. And it was a very tall ceiling, as you remember. So it started leaking and it would kind of run down. And I started covering all the computers with huge things of plastic. And then I would take it off in the morning and let the kids use them. And Max Bridgham was the assistant superintendent. And he came in. Do you remember him? Mm-hmm. He said, "Now we're going to close the library. And we're going to fix the roof. We're going to put some tar on the roof." And I said, "Well, I'm really against that. I never close ever. But if you can do this efficiently, okay, I'll keep covering things up with plastic." So Sandy Childers was our secretary. And I came in, I think it was a Monday. And she always knew everything, right? And I walked into the office and I said, "Sandy, did they put the tar on the roof?" Because I thought, said they were doing it, they ordered the tar. And it was going to be Jim Smith and I think Tom were going to do it. And she looked at me, she said, "Yes, they did." And then she started doing this, like, and I went, "Oh no." I said, "What happened?" She said, "They got the tar and they put the buckets on the roof. They never spread the tar. They just left the buckets on the roof." Did you ever know that? And I had smoke coming out of my ears. And I know Sandy was like, "Oh, I didn't want to tell Mary." And I think I had a pretty strong personality. I was like, "Don't mess with me because I've got stuff to do here with these kids." And she just sat there. And I said, "I don't believe it. I don't believe it." And so the whole staff knew. Whoever was in the lounge, that door was always open. They said, "Mary's really mad." I was really mad. But that was this tar on the roof story that everybody, I kind of forgot about that.
Did that eventually get fixed, I hope?
Oh, yeah. I said, "That's it. Pay them overtime, whatever you have to do." No, so that, I remember that was just like.
Well, the building was only 60 or so years old,
It was a flat roof.
It needed
It was
help.
totally flat, yeah. No, I remember that. Oh, I remember too, Sandy, she was so funny. So once again, I got a phone call because we had to go down, answer the phone in the office.
That's right.
Eventually, I think I had a phone maybe because I ordered all the films and stuff. And I got a phone call at school, and how did they call us down? Did we have an intercom?
We sent an aide, I think.
Yeah, I don't think we even had an intercom. So someone came to get me, Mrs. Baldwin, that was my name then. "You need to come to the office." I said, "Okay." So she hands me the phone, and it was the vet, and I was having my cat fixed. The name of the cat was Lucy. And the vet said, "Well, Mary," and of course everyone's in the lounge and everybody can hear, "Mary, we've got the cat open to fix it, but it's a male cat." And Sandy, I said, "What?" And everyone is listening to me. And I said, "It's a male cat. Its name is Lucy." And Sandy is sitting there going, "Oh no." That's what I remember though. And everybody, that lounge was right there, like right there. And so anything that happened to you, I just remember, and Sandy was just like in hysterics. She couldn't stop laughing. She was like, "Uh-oh." I said, "Well, go ahead and fix it anyway. Fix the cat."
Do what you gotta do.
Yeah, so those are some of the funny stories I remember. I loved my job. It was a great job.
We, unless you have something else?
Nope, I kind of went through your questions. I think I covered everything. I think it was amazing that we only had 325 students when I started.
I know.
How big is it now? 560? 600?
There's at least 500, I think, in the middle school.
And that's a lot.
And then
It's a big
how
increase.
many ever elementary schools? 3 elementary schools now. And
Right.
yeah, so it's big. We would like to thank you. And we'll
Thank
get
you.
back to you about how these things are going to work out.
Okay.
Thank you for your time, Mary. That was delightful.
I hope I didn't share too many weird things.
No, that's part of the fun of it.
Yeah, it was good for me to reminisce because we all went through so many changes, I think, with technology.
Mm-hmm.
For me, especially having to automate the whole library.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah,
a
it was
huge
big
job.
change. Well, thank you so
But I
much.
loved it. I loved it. And it was always great to work with you. We had so much fun. Thanks.